Hey everybody, welcome to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, visionrecordingstudios.com, and here on my YouTube channel. And today I'm going to do a little video, a little comparison video, and take a look at the new PreSonus Studio One Console Shaper plugin, which was a new addition to the 3.2 version, which was just released February 25th or 26th, 2016. So just a couple of days ago. And so there's a lot of videos now already out on there. People talking about it on YouTube. Studio One Expert, it's a great resource to check that out on. Marcus does a great job looking at the bare bones of this and kind of walks you through the how-tos and the what-tos and the who-tos. So I'm not going to do what he did because, you know what, he does a great job and I'm not going to be able to do a better video than he is. So why should I try, right? So, but what I would like to do here, and again, this is going to be slightly an unfair comparison because I've only played with this a little bit, and you have to play with this quite a bit. But I just want to, I want to do something, because when I saw this plugin, I thought, you know, this is great. PreSonus is, you know, everyone, the big thing is, and the thing that I've been talking about for years in digital audio recording is getting back to that analog kind of vibe. And we talk a lot on this channel about third-party plugins, regardless of what company, and all the vintage style plugins, the 1176s and the channel strips and the tape machines and the virtual console collections and all of that jive. And, you know, PreSonus was, you know, is probably the first that I've known. I mean, I'm sure some of the other DAWs have something, you know, similar where they try to add a little analog vibe to a stock plugin, but this is probably, the one that's probably gone the furthest as far as where it's, you know, actually usable. They started off with Softube with the saturation knob, which, you know, I'm not a big fan of, but, you know, they made that attempt, and that's a useful plugin from time to time. But, you know, because everyone is into now trying to get back to that analog sound, the kind of dirty up, if you will, the digital signal and make it sound more analog-ish, with that vibe and that tone and all that stuff that we talk about on this channel. If you watch any of my videos, we talk extensively about this stuff all the time. So PreSonus put out a you know, a plugin called the Console Shaper, which is supposed to emulate some of the analog goodness and the harmonic distortion and the you know, the non-linearities that happen when you run a digital signal through an analog piece of hardware. And that's what the Console Shaper is trying to do. And what I'd like to do in this video quickly on a set of drums, and I'll do some follow-up videos on some different instruments and whole mixes and stuff at one point. But because the plugin's so new, I just started playing with it. I would like to compare this to the Virtual Console Collection by Slate Digital, which is, again, the Slate Digital Virtual Console Collection. If you know about it, I'll pull it up here. We're going to compare the two, and we're going to compare them on a drum bus. So the VCC, if you know anything about that, the VCC is a plugin that emulates, 6 different analog desks. And the VCC has a two parts to their plugin. They have what's called the mix bus here, which goes on in this case, the drum bus and maybe the master bus. And then they also have, which would go on each individual track, would be the Virtual Console Collection, the virtual channel. So the black one here, that would go on each individual track. The gray plugin would go on the buses, the master and, or in our case, the drum bus. Okay. And so it's designed to be used a little differently than the Console Shaper. The Console Shaper is only made to be used on buses. Okay. And I don't think it's on VCAs, it's just on buses, not on individual tracks. Now, what the Console Shaper claims to do is it claims to be able to, when you put it on like a drum bus, which we're going to do here, and on a master bus, all the channels that are routed to that bus are going to affect the way the Console Shaper kind of reacts. So what I'd like to do is I would like to quickly, with a little bit of drums here, just kind of toggle back and forth between the Console Shaper and the VCC and see what the differences are. How does it stack up? Does it stack up? What's the dealio with that? Okay, so let me just show you what we have going on here. Now these are not raw files. This is a mix that's kind of in the process of being done. And so there's some processing on these drums, and that's okay because I didn't want to do it just on raw tracks because ultimately you're going to be using these things on process tracks in the end. So I wanted to kind of get what is it really going to sound like in the real world, so to speak. So down here in brown, all soloed up are our drums. Okay, we have kick, snare, hi-hats, toms 1, tom 2, overhead left and right. Now this session was a live session, not live in a venue, but live in a studio where all the instruments were playing at the same time in a live room. And that's how this was recorded. So the room left and right I've muted because you can hear a ton of mic bleed. You're going to hear some mic bleed just on the drum kit itself. You're going to hear a little bit of vocals, a little bit of faint guitar, a little bit of faint bass guitar. Okay, so these are not software drums. These are live drums. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. And all these drums are processed. So you can look at all the insert effects I have here. I have a phase correction tool called Auto Align on my drums. All the drums, the first plugin in the chain is going to be the Virtual Tape Machine by Slate Digital. So all the drums have that treatment. You can see here the next plugin I have turned off. That's the virtual channel, part of the Virtual Console collection. I wanted to turn that off and not use it on the individual tracks because we don't use the console shaper on the individual tracks, just on the buses. So I wanted to turn that off so we weren't kind of muddying up our little comparison here by having the virtual channel on when the console shaper's on, if that makes any sense. So that is turned off. After that, I'm going to a channel strip, an SSL channel strip by Universal Audio, which is a little bit of light compression and EQ. And that's really it. And then I'm going to a drum reverb, which is just to give it a little bit of space. It's almost, it's so subtle, which is the Universal Audio Ocean Way Studios, just to give it a little bit of space. Okay. And then that is all being routed to a drum bus here. And on that drum bus, we have a console shaper opened up, which is right here on the left. Okay. And then I have underneath it, I have the virtual mix bus, which is in bypass mode right now. It's turned off so we can compare the two back and forth. Okay, that's on the drums. Now over on the master bus, on the far right, we have the console shaper, which is here on the right-hand side. And then again, I also have the virtual console, the mix bus, part of the plugin, which we've bypassed, so we can turn them on and off between the two. Okay, and then after that, I have the Slate Digital FG Mu, a little bit of bus compression, maybe a half a dB, 1 dB, not doing much. And then finally, the virtual tape machine at the end of the chain, okay? Because this is the way I would normally set up a mix. I'd process all the stuff, and then I would drop these things in. So let's listen quickly. I have a little loop here, just part of the drums of what we got here, and I bypassed, as you can see, the console shaper, so that's not being used right now. And the virtual console is not being used, and I will open that up and put it underneath. The screen's going to get a little busy here, so bear with me, okay? So we have the drum bus here, console shaper, drum bus here, virtual mix bus, okay? And then we have the master bus, the master output bus, console shaper, and we have the master output bus, VCC mix bus, okay? So what we're going to do is everything's in bypass right now. These 4 plugins are in bypass, so we're not using them. So let's just hear what the drums kind of sound like. Processed on each individual track, but not processed with these plugins that you see on your screen. Okay, so those are our processed semi-raw drums, okay? And so as you can hear a little bit of vocal in there, you can hear a little bit of bleed. As I said, this was all recorded in a live room, so all the instruments were in a room playing together, so the drum mics, it picked up some of these other instruments. So, and that's okay, that's just part of what this session is. So now let's talk about the console shaper, okay? And let's just see what this kind of does. So here on the drum bus, we have the console shaper. Basically, I just went through a bunch of presets and just played with it. And I picked the last preset, which was called Well Done. And then I tweaked it. So we have 3 controls on the console shaper. We have a drive, which will, as you turn this up, how much signal we're going to push into the plugin. The more we push the drive, the more of that distorted analog drive we're going to get, or analog distortion we're going to get. It's going to get a little crunchy as we push up the drive. We have the noise, which will add like kind of what sounds like tape hiss in the background. Again, just analog hiss from analog, electronics. When you push stuff hard into analog gear, you'll tend to get a little bit of hiss there. So by having some noise across all the tracks, it adds a little bit of a glue and a little bit of a depth feeling to the tracks. And then crosstalk. And what crosstalk is it's going to drill down. If this is on the drum bus, it's going to drill down into the individual drum tracks that are routed to this plugin, and you're going to start to hear you're going to start to hear the tracks kind of bleed into each other, so to speak. It's not really mic bleed, but it kind of picks up the non-linearities from all the tracks that are routed to this and kind of blends them together in a way. So it just adds kind of a different vibe. Now you got to be careful with this because the more you turn this up, things start to get wobbly and phasey, and we'll talk about that in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it turned bypassed. I'm going to bypass it on the master output and just do the drum bus, which is this plugin right here in the top left hand corner. So let's play back that loop and let's insert and let's enable this plugin. You know, we play with the drive a little bit. You can hear things get a little hairy. So you can hear that hiss when I turn it off, how the noise goes away. So you want to be sparing with this kind of stuff. You know, a little bit of noise is okay, but I wouldn't go too crazy. Okay, and then the crosstalk. See, when you turn it all the way up, things start getting a little wobbly and out of time there. So we want to kind of back that off and do that kind of, again, sparingly. It's bypassed. Okay, it starts to add a little bit of depth and a little bit of analog vibe. It's subtle, but it's definitely there. It just makes things sound a little bit warmer, a little bit fatter. Now, if we add in the master bus, now that drum bus is being routed to the master output bus. So let's take a listen to what that does. I'm gonna play with the drive a little bit. So as soon as you enable the one on the master output bus, all of a sudden you can start to hear a lot more depth in the kick drum. It just seems to get a little bit fatter. Okay, so if I bypass both and then turn them both on, this is what the console shaper is doing to this semi-processed drum set of tracks here. That's before. Okay, so it just gives it, again, kind of a warm, fat, round kind of a sound. Again, it's somewhat subtle, but it's there. It's not overly hyped. And again, you can control this by, you know, the more you drive into the console shaper, the more of the effect you're going to kind of hear. Okay, so now that's the console shaper. Now let's just compare that to the VCC just for, you know, just for giggles here, just to see what happens. So again, the VCC's been bypassed this whole time, and I'll turn it on and off by clicking this bypass button here. So let's start with it off and let's turn it on. Now the console shaper is bypassed, so let's see what happens if we use the VCC. And I'm using this on the Neve console. I don't know what console this PreSonus plugin is emulating necessarily. Don't know if there's any one specific one, but we're going to use the Neve on the virtual mix bus. Again, raw drums. Okay, so instantly you hear a lot more, it's more obvious, a little bit louder. So let's turn down the output a little bit. Let's try to level match the plugin a little so we're not Okay, so to my ears, the VCC has a little bit more effect on kind of the crack of the snare. Things start to open up a little bit. The drums don't get as deep sounding as maybe the console shaper, but it definitely adds a little bit of oomph to the bottom end, which is kind of nice. So again, it's a different flavor. So I'm not trying to say one is better than the other. That's not the point of this. I'm just trying to compare, you know, something that the console shaper was created to kind of give, you know, that analog console vibe to your mix, and that's what the VCC does as well. Now keep in mind, again, the VCC has the virtual channel part of the plugin that you're supposed to put on all the individual tracks leading up to the mix bus, which I've done, but as you saw earlier, I've turned those off so we can kind of compare apples to apples. So all we're really comparing is the drum bus between the virtual mix bus VCC and the console shaper, and the master output bus between the console shaper and the VCC. Okay, so again, let's try this one more time here. Let's bypass the VCC, the Slate Digital plugin, and let's turn on the console shaper, and I'll just bounce back and forth and just see, you know, what the differences are. Raw drums. VCC. So the PreSonus console shaper tends at a little bit more bottom end. You can hear a little more thump in the kick as opposed to the virtual mix bus. But overall, you know, again, this is not a which one is better. This is just kind of quickly comparing the two and just saying, how's the console shaper stack up? Is it kind of, you know, is it not really, worthy of the hype that maybe people are building up to it? No, not at all. I think the console shaper does a great job. It really definitely adds some nice color to your mix. And so if you're a PreSonus Studio One user and you're not really using third-party plugins, or you don't have the budget or the means to, This is a great solution, the Console Shaper. Is it as good as the VCC? Well, again, it's not really if it's a better or worse. I've only played with it for a few minutes. The thing, about the VCC, which is a little different, is that, you have 6 different consoles, specific consoles that are being emulated. Everything from a couple of SSL consoles to an API, to a Neve, which is what we're using today, to a Trident, to an RC tube. So there's a little bit more variety, I guess you can say, where in the Console Shaper, it's just, it's kind of a one-trick pony, but not that that's a bad thing. And then secondly, again, with the VCC, you're also supposed to use the virtual channel across all of the individual tracks, where the Console Shaper, you're not doing that. So, now that I'm thinking of it, just for let's just bypass this for a second, just for grins here. Let's go ahead and let's turn on those virtual console parts of the plugin. Okay, let's turn these on for all the drums. So now we're listening to the way the VCC is intended to be used, which is not just on the mix bus and on the master bus and on the drum bus, but also across all the individual drum tracks. And then we'll just play back and forth with the Console Shaper and such. So now everything is going through the VCC, and then we're going to flip back and forth between the Console Shaper and the mix bus portion of the VCC once again. So let's take a look at this. So we're going to start with the VCC in bypass mode. Okay, right now it's in bypass. And let's go ahead and start with the raw drums. It's a Console Shaper. Let's go to the VCC. Well, I'll tell you what, this Console Shaper does a really good job. So now what we just compared there again is the VCC using both the virtual mix bus part of the plugin and the virtual channel. And when I bypass it at the virtual mix bus, it also will bypass all the virtual channels across all the individual drum tracks. I hope that makes sense. If you have the VCC, you know what I'm talking about. So now we're really comparing, the full use of the VCC versus the Console Shaper. And I will say the Console Shaper stacks up pretty well. Again, the VCC has more options, more consoles you can emulate, different sounds, different flavors. But again, for a stock plugin, my first impressions of this, and I'm doing this kind of, live. I've only played with it maybe 5 or 10 minutes before I hit record here on the screen, is I wanted to kind of give you my first impressions. And I think the Console Shaper, once you tweak it and play with it, does an outstanding job. Again, it's not better or worse, it's just different. If you don't have the Virtual Console collection or anything like it, the Console Shaper can be that solution for you. If you already have the VCC, well, now you have, again, a different flavor. It sounds a little different. The Console Shaper sounds different than the VCC. Not better or worse, just different. And I think now if you have both, you have a couple extra tools in your toolbox. So we're going to take a look at this Console Shaper in a little bit more depth in a future video when I'm going to do it across other tracks and or other groupings of tracks, and maybe do a whole mix where we don't use the VCC at all. We'll do it on some electronic drums or software drums and some raw tracks. But I wanted to give you kind of my first impressions of it and show it to you in a mix where tracks are kind of already processed somewhat. So it's not just raw audio tracks. So that is the difference between, or the comparison between, the PreSonus Console Shaper, the new Console Shaper in version 3.2, and the VCC, the Virtual Mix Bus and Virtual Console Collection. I hope you found this somewhat informative. For more tips, training, concepts, and techniques around everything home recording, head out to homerecordingmadeeasy.com and check out the Made Easy series along with the Quick Mix series. And for more information about my mixing and mastering and training services, you can always head out to visionrecordingstudios.com. So until next time with another video, this has been Dave with homerecordingmadeeasy.com, and I will speak to you all soon. Take care.